It's a great honor to be chosen for this. I don't think I deserve it, but an honor nonetheless. I want to thank those that were involved with it, Dale and others, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. This is my school. I walked in, and you know, in 40 years, this place in here hadn't changed much. It's pretty similar to what it was when I was here. You heard all the good stuff, and I think some of it was made up, I believe, but when I was in school, I was such a good student that my parents came to PTO meetings now, PTO meetings under assumed names. So, you know, it wasn't always like this. One thing that just comes to my mind when I walked in, how many of you remember or know or studied? You don't remember, certainly. Matt, I'm going to have to rephrase that. How many of you studied and know what happened at Kent State? Anybody? Couple? Kent State happened during all the protests of the Vietnam War. And the reason that I remember it so well is because, young lady, I was sitting in the seat where you are right now on May the 4th, 1970. Seat's well worn. And we learned the fact that 29 National Guardsmen had been at a protest in Kent State where students were protesting the Vietnam War. And something had triggered those young men that were the same age as those students to fire their weapons. And 4 unarmed students, and 9 more were injured. 4 were killed. And they announced it. We were having some kind of assembly. I don't remember what the assembly was, Matt, but we were having an assembly in here, and they announced that, and I thought, how could we turn on ourselves? You know, I've understood what happened in Nazi Germany, how those people were convinced that an ethnicity was wrong and was doing wrong by them, and they turned on those that wasn't right, but it was a little easier to understand. But not in this country, not where kids the same age. These National Guardsmen were the same age as the kids that were protesting. And that had happened, and it really had a great impact on my life, and I won't forget that. You know, some things you remember about where you were, and that's one of them. That was I was sitting right over here. But how do we get to that point? What happens that causes us to not value each other, to keep us from seeing the worth in another person? You know, I'd like to talk to you today about your hopes and your dreams and your goals. And my goal today is that by the end of this 10 or 15 minutes, that I can tell you what the meaning of life is, and you believe me. So that's a small goal. We'll see how we get along. It comes down, you know, those kids at Kent State and those National Guardsmen, they all had a value, but somehow the value got misplaced by somebody that day. How you value yourself, how you value others. Is the world, if something happened tomorrow and you were gone, have you touched the world? Have you touched anybody? Have you made a difference in anybody's life? Does it make a difference that you were here or not? What would the epitaph read on your life? You know, George Herbert Walker Bush, first Bush, said something I think that really carries a lot of weight to me. He says, we all have something to give. So if you know how to read, find someone who can't. If you've got a hammer, find a nail. If you're not hungry and not lonely and not in trouble, seek out someone who is. All of you have different talents. I see football players here. It's going to be called on tonight. Probably I heard the band's going to state. Some of you've got some resounding talent there, or that wouldn't happen. The soccer team. How many of you play on the soccer team? Congratulations. That's a great accomplishment. And you all have different talents, and we can all give back in different ways. I don't have any many talents. I can't play an instrument. I tried a lot of them for a day at a time. And I tried to play sports. I tried to do what you guys do. And I played, it was called Pop Warner football. And Leland, I played for 4 years on the Cowboys team. My dad was a farmer. He didn't have time to come. Finally, after 4 years of playing, one day he came, and I looked over there, and he was up there in the stands. And boy, I played my heart out. I got home that night. He left before the game was over. I got home that night. We were sitting at the dinner table, and he never said a word. No compliments or anything, Dale. He wasn't too free with those. And so finally, at the end of supper, I said, Dad, what did you think about my football game today? He said, study hard, boy. You're not ever going to be an athlete. But sometimes we need a shake to wake us up and get us headed in the right direction. And my dad wasn't afraid to shake me. He did it quite often, but that wasn't my talent. Well, where was it? Where do you measure your value? How do you measure your value? Some may say, look, I've got 234 friends on Facebook, and I don't know how many friends is a bunch on Facebook. Maybe it's 2,034, I don't know. But some may say, I've got that many friends on Facebook. That's how valuable I am. And some people tell me there's a thing called retweeting. And how many times have you been retweeted? If you're retweeted, that means somebody thinks you really know something. You're pretty valuable. And all of those things are sometimes how we measure things. But it's not what our value is. As we mature, as we seek maturity, when we were freshmen, we looked at sophomores, and man, when I get that maturity, as sophomores, we really look at juniors because juniors are driving, right? Man, when I get that maturity, when I can drive, that's another ball game. I always thought 17 was the greatest age there ever was. You could drive and you couldn't get drafted. Anybody know what the draft is? Probably not, but anyway, it's a good age. And then you're a senior, and you're king of the hill, man. I heard y'all's principal. Y'all are running things here. You're showing leadership. You kind of who everybody looks up to in the school. You're king dog. And so as each time, and then next year, something else is going to happen. Some of you are going to go to work. Some of you are going to be fortunate enough to attend one of our local colleges here, maybe a vocational school. We're so blessed in this area to have an opportunity for you at OCTC, at Kentucky Wesleyan. We have the president over here at Kentucky Wesleyan, at Brescia. You have a tremendous resource in our area to be able to further that education, whether it be vocation or if you, like I was just glad to get out, and I'd be happy to go to work if I could get out. That's what I wanted to do, but ended up, my dad said, you're going to college, so I ended up going to college, and I'm glad I did, and I hope that you're able to pursue your dreams like that. But we tend to measure our value or our maturity by the way we act. You have a certain way, a senior acts a certain way, right? You don't act like a sophomore or junior, right? Isn't that right, Principal? You act like a senior. By what we wear. I remember school picture day. I was never satisfied with what I had on. I'd always borrow something that I thought from somebody that looked cool, Leland, so I'd have a good picture. Didn't help. By what we gain, or by where we go, all of those things, we kind of contribute and add that up to our value. But in reality, maturity is when we recognize what is important in our life and what rewards are, and what rewards are important. Most of us, when we go to talking about rewards, want rewards for ourselves. I would have liked to have had all A's. I would have considered that a great reward. But I had one teacher who's just passed away, and they're having a memorial service for her tomorrow. Her name was Helen Sears. And Miss Sears was a no-nonsense teacher. And I'd always gotten by pretty easy, you know, and didn't have to work very hard, and kind of sloughed a little when I could. Y'all don't do that anymore, I know. And so they decided at West Louisville Junior High that they were going to teach French. And my dad thought that that was something that I needed to take. And if you can't tell by now, he ruled the roost, so I took French. And I gave about not that much effort. I didn't care about French. I didn't think it was important. I couldn't see the need for it. And Miss Sears rewarded my efforts with an F. I'd never made an F before. When I carried that home, I thought, you know, Bart, that'd be mighty easy to change to a B. but I didn't do that. I carried that home, and I asked my dad, I said, Dad, what causes grades like that, environment or heredity? I left out laziness. I didn't want to talk about that, but he didn't think that was very funny either. And as a result, I got grounded for the next grading period, and my grades increased significantly, and Miss Sears became one of my favorite teachers. And she helped me several times while I was in school. She was a tutor. She helped my son as he prepared for the ACT, and hundreds of other students, and she was a very great lady. But she had to shake me a little bit. Sometimes we need to be shaken. But as we want those rewards, we want stuff, we want things, we want glory, we want fame, we want power, we want position. We're looking for all those things, and I caution you as you go out and make your step out after the next semester ends, that's not what life's all about. Now, some of you are going to be very successful financially. Some of you are going to be great entrepreneurs. And so that will give you an opportunity to do what I think we're going to talk about is the meaning of life later. Maturity is achieved when we realize our reward for helping someone else or doing a good deed is much more rewarding than self-indulgence. Have you ever found somebody that really needed something that they couldn't do for themselves and you were able to help them? Might be something as easy as stopping on the side of the road and helping somebody change a flat tire. Could be, I was in New York last summer. We were finished with our little tour, and we decided we'd stop in and get a sandwich, and there was a guy outside. And he didn't ask me for money. He said, would you buy me something to eat? And I said, yeah, why don't you come in and sit with us? I bought him a sandwich, and the guy was a veteran. And he had been in Iraq, and he had PTSD, and he was going to Baltimore for treatment. He didn't have a place to live, and it just hit the heartstrings of my life, and the blessings that I'd had and that some people weren't going to have. I was in Africa about 10 years ago, and we were touring this small village in Malawi, and a lady came out, and she was so excited about Americans being in her little village, and she said, come into my home. And she had a hut that was made out of corn husks. It's built like a teepee. And she was cooking inside, and she was cooking hominy. And she'd been out in the field that morning picking up corn that had been left from the harvest. And that's what they were going to eat that day. She was cooking it, and she insisted that we have some of what she was fixing. And she cooked it like bread somehow. I don't know what her recipe was, but she broke off a piece. out of courtesy, we ate some, and out of a tremendous guilt also, because I knew that that was their meal for that day, and there wasn't anything, there wasn't any shelves, there wasn't any cupboards. The next morning, she was going back into the field and try to glean and get enough that she could have provided, so she could provide for her kids. But yet she wanted to share that with us. And I realized that if you live in this country, you're rich. How many people think they're rich? Nobody thinks they're rich. That lady perceives you as being rich. You have food, you have a roof over your head, you have transportation, you have education. None of those things did she have. And rich is a perception. And in this world, a lot of times, we get so confused about what riches are. We think that riches are the kind of car we drive, or the house that we live in, or in agriculture, the farm that you have, or the clothes that we wear. And it's so misplaced. And if you see somebody in that situation that has enough for today, and they plan for today, and tomorrow's another day, and you realize we're rich, we're blessed, and it's a shame not to take advantage of it. I hope you're taking advantage of this education, because it puts you so far ahead of the rest of the world. We, and I say we, I think society has done you a great disservice. And I see that in my grandchildren. And now as I look back, I can see when I did it to my children. But we created in you the idea that you're the center of the universe. The most important thing happening in my family is what's ever going on with my kids or my grandkids. And I want them, I'd drop anything to pay attention to them, to do the things that they want to do. And then you have to go through life, and then you have to discover, and suddenly you realize, I'm not the center of the universe. I'm not the most important thing in the world. The most important thing in the world is not sitting in your seat. It's what's on either side of it. It's your friends. It's the people whose life you make a difference, who you can make laugh when they're having a hard time, who you can be there for if there's trouble at home, who you can make a sacrifice for. And when you make that sacrifice, you buy in. You're part of the solution. You become part of the solution. And Danny Thomas, any of you remember I go with that word again, Matt. Any of you know who Danny Thomas was? Marlo Thomas. Danny Thomas was an actor on TV, and he had a family that played a TV family and was very successful. And if you ever watch, any of you ever watch Andy Griffith? You ever watch any of the old Andy Griffith shows? At the end, you like Andy Griffith? I do too. At the end, it'll say a Danny Thomas production, because Danny Thomas was very successful in doing TV shows and series, and he was very accomplished. He's a good actor, and he was a very good businessman. And he felt the need in his life for something else. How many of you have heard of St. Jude's Hospital in Memphis? Danny Thomas was the founder of St. Jude's Hospital. He wasn't a doctor. He wasn't an expert on cancer. He wasn't an expert on children. But he knew he wanted to do something different. And he made the sacrifice, financially many times, in establishing St. Thomas. And here's what he says about success. Success in life has nothing to do with what you gain in life or your accomplishments. Wait a minute. Doesn't have anything to do with what we gain. Doesn't have anything to do with what we accomplish. It's what you do for others that makes you successful. In the end, it's who you touched. It's what friends here that you made a difference for. If you're gifted in math and one of your best friends isn't, and you help them through a math course, that's a sacrifice. And you're bought in that person's life. It was said, and I don't know who said it, but you've not lived a perfect day even though you have earned your money unless you've done something for someone who will never be able to repay you. Doesn't make sense, does it? Why would you want to do why would you want to do something for somebody that can't pay you? Can't pay you for your time. Your time's valuable. It used to be, it was harder, I think, Dale, to get a donation of money than it was time. People would volunteer their time. But today, and I bet Bart experiences this out at Kentucky Wesleyan too, it's a lot easier to get somebody to give some money than it is to give their time. And it becomes a precious item. So you say that we're going to take our time and we're not going to get paid back for it? What she's saying and what Danny Thomas says, that's the most reward you can get. The money doesn't compare. Have you ever done something for somebody that was sick and you could look in their eyes and tell that they sincerely appreciated it? Done it? Have you ever done anything for a friend that you knew that was having a hard time and there wasn't any way that they were going to be able to do that for themselves? And how did that feel when you got done with that? The reward is great, much greater than it is monetarily. You know, it's been said that the wisest man that ever had lived on earth or that ever would live on earth again was Solomon. He was king of Israel. And Solomon wrote lots and lots of proverbs and advice, and in it is a lot of wisdom. And one of the things he says is, cast but a glance at riches, and they are gone, for they will surely sprout wings and fly off in the sky like an eagle. Have you ever anticipated something? I wanted something so bad, I want it so bad, whether it be a car or a new dress or whatever it might be, and then you got it, and what was the anticipation was actually more fun than actually having whatever it was. Have you ever had something that you really cherished and something happened to it? It's gone. I had a nice car, Matt, when we got married, and my wife was a school teacher at Maceo. And I know you ladies aren't like this, but my wife's late for everything. And she was late going to school one morning, and she was driving my car, and it had been raining, and it was slick. And when she pulled into the school, her parking place didn't have nice parking lots like they do now, Matt. Her parking place was right next to the school, and it was grass, and she hit the brakes, and she slid, and she put my car right inside the school building. When I got home that night, I walked in and been working on the farm, and I was tired, and I looked, and there was the front end of my car crushed. I hadn't been married long, so I knew better than to go in and start raising Cain. So I sat out in my truck for about 30 minutes, and I went in. She said, "I'm sorry." I said, "That's all right. We're going to sell it." She said, "You're going to sell your car?" And I said, if something that's just worth money is going to cause us not to get along, I don't want it around. And if we allow the riches that we seek when we leave here, when you start your life outside of this place, if we allow them to drive our lives, the riches of the world, we'll be in big trouble. Some of you will be rich, not only rich, blessed with friends and with ability to help, but you may in fact be financially blessed. And this just gives you even a bigger chance to make a difference. Look what Danny Thomas did. Look what St. Jude does every day. Every TV commercial, I just can't hardly watch them. Those kids come in and sick and talk about making it through, and children shouldn't be sick like that. Danny Thomas felt the same way and put everything he had to see that they were taking the best care of they possibly could. So, as we wind this thing up, I told you I was going to tell you the meaning of life. And it's simple. It's simple. Love others as you love yourself. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. And you'll make a big difference in this world. You may not be worth $100 million, but you might be worth 100 million friends. That's all I have to say today. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate it. Thank you.